You won't be cheering in September. That's what Jeremy Corbyn shouted across the Commons on Wednesday as the government benches celebrated the failure of opposition MPs to try to stop a no-deal Brexit. So what on earth has the Labour leader got up his sleeve? Can a no-deal Brexit now be stopped? Stephen Kinnock is the MP for Aberafon and a member of the Commons Brexit Committee, and as you can see, he joins me now. Bore da, good morning.
Bore da.
Oliver Letwin said following the defeat of that motion on Wednesday, he was one of the co-signatories of the motion, that Parliament's run out of options to try and stop a no-deal Brexit. Is he right?
I tend to agree. I think the only possibility now would be to pass a motion of no confidence either in late July or in September when we have a new Prime Minister in place. But the question is, would we get enough Conservative MPs to vote with us? Do turkeys vote for Christmas? My general experience is that they don't, and I'm not convinced that we would win a motion of no confidence. The right thing to do, therefore, is to vote for the withdrawal agreement bill. Unfortunately, we were not given the chance to vote for the withdrawal agreement bill because the Labour front bench very rapidly dismissed it when it came back last time. That set in train a chain of events which led to the fall of Theresa May, and we're now going to see a new Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, who is prepared to take us out on the 31st of October without a deal. So I'm afraid we are in a terrible mess. The way to get out of it is to get the withdrawal agreement bill over the line.
So Theresa May's deal in legislative form, you want to see that brought to the Commons to be tweaked?
Well, the final version of the bill that was submitted to Parliament actually had a lot of concessions to Labour. Bill on workers' rights, bill on environmental standards, a promise to have a vote and a debate on a second referendum at the committee stage. But we unfortunately dismissed it. Our front bench, the Labour leadership, dismissed the withdrawal bill within hours of it being published. And that, as I say, led to a chain of events which has now put the future of the country in the hands of 160,000 Tory party members, hardly a representative sample.
Is there any sense that the Labour leadership is willing to bring it back in September or whenever?
No, I've given up trying to say what will happen in all of this, James. What I will say is should happen. What should happen is, if we leave the European Union without a deal, it is a catastrophe for the British economy. I genuinely believe it could be the last nail in the coffin for the British steel industry. We cannot accept leaving without a deal. The least risky and most achievable way of ensuring we don't crash out without a deal on the 31st of October is to pass a deal either in July or September. And there isn't time for a second referendum. There isn't time, I don't think, for a general election, not so much time, but an issue that the Tories won't get it over the line. What are you left with? You're left with the option of leaving with a deal. And the withdrawal agreement bill, full of concessions to Labour, it's a lifeline. We should grasp it with both hands.
If there was enough votes in the Commons to bring the government down and go towards a general election, I mean, looking at the polling, is it necessarily in Labour's interest to go to the country at the moment? Brexit Party on in front, according to the Sunday Times poll today. Lib Dems nipping at your heels. It wouldn't be great for either of the two main parties, would it?
The top priority has to be to ensure we don't leave the EU without a deal on the 31st of October. Getting a general election and a Labour government that would not, of course, do that is one way of doing it, but I think it's a long shot. The least risky and most achievable way is to leave with a deal. But what I would also say on the politics of all of this is, of course, Brexit has turned our politics into a single issue, deeply divided and polarised situation, with opportunists like the Brexit Party and the Lib Dems and Plaid Cymru jumping on the bandwagon and making politics about one issue only. Labour is a whole nation party, a multi-issue party. We've got to get politics back to that. Delivering Brexit would take the air out of the Brexit balloon.
Labour says that it's trying to bridge the divide between the Remain camps and the Leave camps, but there is incredible pressure, as you know, for Labour to shift its position. The Shadow Cabinet, as I understand, is meeting this week to discuss Brexit policy. Pressure to shift its position fully behind a second referendum and remaining in the EU. As far as you're concerned, would that be a mistake?
I feel that we've muddied the waters. I think we're a party that should have continued to say we will honour the referendum, but we will do so in a way that protects the jobs and the livelihoods of the people that we were elected to represent. And
that's what Labour has been saying, isn't it?
It has been, but as we've shifted more and more tact towards second referendum, we've muddied the waters. But I feel
so
that
no shift then? No shift towards fully backing a second referendum? That would be the wrong thing as far as you're concerned?
For me, I think it was a strategic and tactical error to muddy the waters in the way that we have. But there's a deeper issue here, which is that if we don't actually keep that clarity around being a whole nation, multi-issue party politics, we will continue to put air into the balloons of the balloon of the Brexit issue, and that plays into the hands of the Brexit Party and other opportunists in Plaid Cymru and the Lib Dems who are looking to feed on the divisions and the divisiveness that Brexit is creating.
OK, with that in mind then, was Mark Drakeford, leader of Welsh Labour, right to shift Welsh Labour's policy fully behind a second referendum and remaining, without, it seems, much consultation with the party?
There's a fundamental question about is it right to try to triangulate and move in different directions in the middle of this debate? And I think we should have stuck to our guns and been the party that honours the referendum, but absolutely does so with a good deal that protects workers and jobs and environmental standards, and that's what I've been campaigning consistently for 3 years.
So he was wrong to do that.
But there's another problem: is that which Tory Prime Minister now is going to come to Parliament and say, let's have a vote on a second referendum? It's not going to happen. They're in an arms race for who can be the hardest Brexiteer of all. So I think we're spending a lot of time and energy on something that is not going to be achievable before the 31st of October. We're not going to get a parliamentary vote and a referendum before the 31st of October. We have to be realistic about this. The reality is the only way of preventing a no-deal catastrophe is to leave the European Union without a deal, with a deal.
We've not got much time, but you've been pushing for the idea of an economic European area relationship, a sort of Norway-style model. Is that dead now? Is that gone? Are you going to have to look for another form of Brexit?
No, if we had had the opportunity to vote through the withdrawal agreement bill at second reading, we could have then got it to committee stage where it would have been open to all kinds of amendments. And I think there was a growing body of support around amending it to make it more like the European Economic Area, more like a Norway-style thing. But if you don't get the withdrawal agreement bill over the line at second reading, we continue at deadlock and we then crash out on the 31st of October, which would be a disaster for the Welsh economy.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Well,